Werewolf Bar Mitzvah, spooky, scary. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies with special guest, Tim Davis. This is the podcast where all three of us went and saw a movie at our local Regal Cinema Theater, and now we're going to talk about it in Matt's on the Pilot, right after the movie, in the parking structure. We're going to talk about such things as, should you see this movie? Should you not see this movie? Should you bring a date? Can you bring your kids? Should you snack? Should you nap? Should you craft? Do you need to pay attention, or can you slack off? Or, we're going to try to touch on all that, none of that, some of that. We're all over the place, but we love it, and we love you. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy, and I love you too. So here we are.
Tim doesn't love you, though. I'll speak for Tim. Oh, never mind.
Okay.
Tim loves you.
Great. So we've got a lot of love going around, and we watched a movie. So we're going to talk about one of those two things right now. Spoiler, it's the movie that we're going to talk about.
Whoa.
This movie is called Wolfman, and it has a very small cast, but I'll check in with Tim for any up-and-comers or famous household people in this movie. Anyone?
I would argue household name might be debatable. One of them is going to be somebody. We'll get into that here.
Oh.
The star is a guy named Christopher Abbott. He's our lead character here, who we meet as a kid at first, and then he grows up.
Whoa, just keep the actors. You don't tell the story. That's Matt's job.
That's all right. Whoops.
Stay in your lane.
Maybe I don't love him. I was looking up what movies he's been in, and he was in First Man, which was that Ryan Gosling space movie, but I don't remember.
Never saw.
He was.
Yep.
And then he's been in some TV shows and Apple TV stuff, but this is kind of his big lead thing. And then Julia Garner plays his wife in this movie. She has been on mostly TV shows, but she will be playing the Silver Surfer in the MCU Fantastic Four movie.
Ooh,
so
very nice.
That might launch her into a bit more mainstream novelty. And
You heard it here from Tim first here, folks.
Yep. And our director of this movie is Lee Wanell, who may not be a household name, but he helped create the first Saw movie. And he's also responsible for directing and conceiving the Insidious franchise.
Gosh, they've got 6 movies or something.
Yeah. And he also directed The Invisible Man.
There we go. All right. Well,
there
let's move on to the next universal creature.
That's right.
There you go.
Well, so
We need a Frankenstein movie. We haven't had a Frankenstein movie. I mean, turn it on its head a little bit, but
right.
But first, the Wolfman.
But first, the Wolfman. Yeah, so what's this movie all about? Well, as Tim alluded to, we open the movie with a boy and his father in the woods of rural Oregon.
Yep.
And they encounter some kind of creature. Not much is said, but they escape with their lives. Then we flash forward 30 years. I presume it was New York City that... the boy now grown to a man is on the street with his daughter, and anyway, we learn about him and his wife and their little family of 3, and then we find out that the boy's father, who has been missing for a while, has been pronounced dead, so they need to go to rural Oregon to kind of pack up belongings and close out the estate of the boy's now the man's father. And so they do that, and they have an encounter with a creature, and there's some kind of infection that travels to the man. And so the rest of the movie is kind of this family trying to stay alive where this creature is chasing them, in all the while that the dad is turning into one of these creatures. And so the family has to kind of come to grips with all those different pieces, and it plays out in a trapped in a house type of activity. And that's kind of all I'll reveal about that. Most of that's all in the trailer. If you've seen the trailer, you kind of get the vibe of what's going on. So there's that. Todd, what is your gut reaction to Wolfman?
Wolfman. Well, like I've been talking about since we walked out of the theater, I've been, I mean, they're not the best movies I've ever seen, but I've been enjoying these, like, Blumhouse, Universal Monster remakes that they've been doing, and, like, taking the original story, but then turning it on its head and doing something special with it. Like, I thought Invisible Man, I mean, I don't remember what I rated it, but...
It was a big hit, though.
I remember walking out and being like, you know what, that was real interesting. I enjoyed that. And this one follows the exact suit of that movie. Like, I was very intrigued with this movie. I did want to see it. Like, I thought I wanted to see it because the trailers were good. And so, you know, I feel like sometimes we're dragged to movies because of what we do and what we've committed to. But this one I wanted to see. And it was nice to want to see a movie that, you know, I'm going to say delivered. Like I'm saying, it's not the best movie I've ever seen, but I thought the combination of tight story, like I didn't feel like there was much like, I'm like, what are we doing here? Let's move it along. Like, I was really engrossed with the suspense through most of the movie. I mean, like, you don't start the movie, there's some not suspenseful parts, but basically once we get into Oregon, it's all suspense. Like, and I thought the mixture of how they shot the movie versus music and soundtrack, like, this could be a really good masterclass on using music to tell a story in a movie to add to it. I just thought it was doing really well on all those parts. I mean, I would say I thought the acting was really good. Some of the dialogue, I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to blame that on the actors. I'm going to blame it on the writing. Like, I thought just some scenes weren't clicking with me because I just thought the lines were kind of dumb. Like, but it wasn't a huge hindrance. Like, typically that's the kind of stuff that I, like, latch onto, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why? But the fact that everything else kind of overpowered that, to me, is a mark that this is a movie I enjoyed. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is one of those movies where I guess you kind of know if you're going to see it, you know if you're not going to see it. This isn't a movie where it's like, hey, maybe I'll try The Wolfman. Like, you either like monster movies or suspense horror movies, or you're not that kind of person. So, you know, obviously if this is not on your radar and you're not going to go see it, I don't think it's so strong that I would say, everyone stop what you're doing, go see this movie. But if you ever had an inkling to be like, oh, that's interesting, I might like that, I enjoyed it, I support it. It's not the best or perfect movie, but it did what it was set out to accomplish. It was suspenseful, it had some scares, nothing too crazy, it had some gore, and it turned a classic story on its head and really, you know, made you... I would say this one's almost, you combine zombies and Wolfman. Like, yeah. And I just thought that was interesting. You know, like, instead of just redoing the original and trying to do another Wolfman telling the same classic story, we got a little interesting with it, you know, and I liked it. So, that's where I'm at. Tim?
Yeah, I'm with you, Todd. Like, I've kind of almost beat for beat. Like, it's, you know, this intrigued me because, like you said, Invisible Man was a nice, fresh twist on that kind of genre, and so it's the same director, so I'm like, okay, well, you know, maybe he's got a new spin on Wolfman, and I thought he did, and it was kind of old-fashioned in a way because it was a lot of tension-building, suspense, scares when you needed them, but not cheap ones. Like, I felt like everything was earned, and like you said, some of the sound design and music choices, not music, score, really.
Score, yeah.
Was really well done as far as, like, the ways they were trying to show the unsettling nature of what was going on.
Yeah, and practical effects, no CGI.
Lots of body horror stuff. If you're into body horror, this movie's got some of that for you. And, you know, like you said, I think the acting, you know, was good, intense, and it felt like, for the most part, you didn't sit there going, why would you do that? Like, I think it added a layer of interesting thing, because the whole time you're unsure as the dad is going through what he's going through. And of course, as the mom and the kid are very torn, because it's like, well, we want to help him, he's still dad, but is he? And that just pervades the whole movie, and it adds an extra tension to it. So it's like, so anytime they include him in something, you know, that's going on, while you're scared for them, you also understand why they're not hesitating either, because it's still Dad. And I think adding that element to it makes it tense the whole time, and you're just on the edge of your seat a little bit, hoping everything works out. But you know in the back of your mind, it may not. And I think that adds a layer to it that gives it a more compelling twists and turns. Well, I mean, not that there are twists and turns, but you know what I mean, as you're in scene to scene, you're just like, ooh, yeah. And I like that about it. I think, like I said, there were some neat visual tricks they used, and yeah, I really want to compliment the sound design and all that. I think that might be a reason to see this in the theater if you're interested in it. It's really plays well on a big screen with, you know, the loud booms and the music changing at certain times because to kind of reflect what's going on. So yeah, I think this director, you know, he's got his little foothold in kind of creepy horror and kind of psychological horror, I guess you could say. He's kind of figured that genre out a little bit because he's got quite a few franchises on his hand, and you know, if he's going to become like the guy who's directing these, I'd be on board for seeing what else he's got up his sleeve. Matt?
Yeah, you guys covered really most of the territory that I would have covered. I won't rehash that stuff, but yeah, really kind of visually stunning movie, I think. And I guess the one thing that I'll touch on that you guys didn't talk a ton about is like the transformation from man to wolf man that happens during the movie. I think is very well done, and I think it's very well acted. Like the actor, you know, there's some prosthetics and things involved, but from a bit of a nuanced take on like some of the small detailed things that are going on that you can kind of pick up on and be like, oh, interesting. There's a little bit of wolf nature coming out in some of the early changing aspects of the character's life, and those just get more pronounced as you kind of go through his transformation into a wolf man. I thought that was really well done. Like I said, you guys touched on a lot of the other good pieces. I will say, if you're squeamish, there are some pretty graphic, gory moments. And you may want to skip this. I was cringing in my seat a little bit a couple times during some of
Which I think was the intent. Especially there's one scene where it happens pretty dramatically suddenly, and you're like, ooh.
Yes.
It kind of wakes you up if you weren't already
I
attached to your seat.
Yeah, I do think it was the intent, and it was successful in its grossness and unsettling nature. So, anyway, I really liked it. I thought it was very good from a pacing, story, acting standpoint. Maybe the wrap up at the end could have been compressed a little bit more. I thought it slowed down just right at the end. But overall, yeah, nice little, well paced, tight story. Good movie.
Yeah. Well, getting down to it, how many deer stands would you give this movie? Deer stand comes into play twice in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, almost 3 times.
Yeah.
0 being the worst, because then you got no deer stands, no hunting, no nothing. What are you doing? You're not feeding your family. Come on, what's happening? 5 deer stands being the best, because then that's 5 vantage points, and that's 5 more guns and 5 more possible dead deer with meat to provide for everything.
Yes.
So, Matt.
Well, I'm going to go with 3.21. Deer stands out of 5. I enjoyed the movie. It's not going to go high on the shelf of great movies ever, but for what it was very well done. A little piece of creature horror, psychological, with a little family stuff thrown in. So yeah, 3-2-1 for me.
Tim?
Yep, I'm with you. It's above average, but not grossly so, or but like you said, it's if you're a genre fan like this, or you've been this one caught your eye, it's definitely worth checking out, and I think you'll have a good time. I'm at a 2.9.
2.9. I'm gonna be a little bit higher than you guys. As I've been dissecting this in my mind, there's one thing that I am really liking about this movie when I walk out is the story, and what I mean by that is that, you know, everyone knows the Wolfman story. You know, like you get scratched or bit, takes time, you start transforming. I think the genius of the story is that, whereas in the other movies it's like weeks and moonlight and all that kind of stuff, this one is an accelerated over the night. Because I comparing this to Nosferatu, that was the last movie we saw. Now that, you know, having time to think about that movie, I think one of the biggest problems is that movie does the kind of like, it tells the story that we know and we've experienced many, many times. And so during the movie, you're like, well, I can guess where this is going. And we've been here a million times before with a vampire movie and transing of a woman and, like, you know, all this kind of stuff. We've been here a million times. There's nothing new or spectacular about this. Whereas this movie, it takes that story, that classic story, but then it just almost shortens it to such a tight, like, kind of like, oh, you're not waiting a fortnight for the moon, and there's no, you know, and it covers all the stuff that's in the classic story. There are technically some wolf man hunters, and, like, there are people who know about it and stuff like that. This movie doesn't go hard into explaining any of that, but I like that it almost, like, touched on the fact that there's elements of the classic story in all through this. So I'm honestly going to land on, like, a 3.8. I've enjoyed myself tonight. Like, I have soda left over for my drink, which really only happens when I'm, like, really into a movie. I didn't eat my Mike and Ike's, which several times I went to start eating the Mike and Ike's, but then I was like, oh, this is getting good. Or I was like, I can tell there's a gore scene coming up. I do not want to start eating these Mike and Ike's. So, yeah.
Take that, Mike and Ike.
Yeah, take it. Well, any last thoughts?
I think if you're a fan of movies, go see this movie.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if you're squeamish, probably not.
Maybe not.
If you're not into horror at all or suspense. But if you're a fan of cinema and, you know, all the special things in a movie that makes cinema and stuff like that, I think this hits on a lot of points that it's just enjoyable.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's more than just, like, if you already... Not the dedicated audience that probably would have seen it already, but it's more of a, if you were on the fence or you thought, oh, they did a Wolfman remake, I wonder if that's any good. We are arguing that it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you strip the Wolfman title from it and you just say, hey, you want to go see a movie that is suspenseful, got some gore, it's a pretty tight story, it's not going to take 3 hours to get through.
Right.
You know, you got some good selling points there, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Of just what people are burnt out on right now.
Yep.
Great. Yes. All of that. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we review the movie Wolfman. And we liked this movie. We gave it an average rating of 3.30333333.
Strong.
And yeah, that's nice. That's above average. And yeah, we would recommend this unless you're extremely squeamish. Then maybe watch something else. But yeah. Thank you for listening to this podcast.
We also met some people in the theater who asked about our podcast because of the shirt that I'm wearing. Yeah, I hope
and if you're listening,
they're
shout
listening
out.
to this now. Hey, thanks for acknowledging my shirt. I really appreciate it.
We hope you become a long-time listeners.
Yeah.
That's right. Both Todd and I have had Matt and Todd Go to the Movies shirts that we like to wear to the theater. So...
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you know, like, reach out to us. Come join us for a movie.
Yeah.
You seem like pleasant people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Join our Facebook page.
Yes. And keep on downloading and subscribe. Just like all of you listening. Do all those things.
Oh.
Please, Todd.
Oh,
don't forget.
our recap.
Oh, yes.
We have to go over that.
We have
quick.
stats from 2024.
Finally, it came through.
Yes.
2024
stats are on the way.
Entertain yourselves for a hot second. I got to get back to the email.
So
then I gotta
previous
check back
episode, we
that.
talked about our biased and worst, and now
Here we go.
our stats.
Some stats from the 2024, which again were calculated before 2024 was over. So
True.
I still question how this is complete.
It's like what Spotify does in like December 5.
Yeah. probably missing the last 2 movies we did. But anyway, we had 32 total episodes.
Oh, okay.
We averaged 2.67 episodes per month.
That sounds right.
Our most popular city was Frankfurt.
In Germany?
Germany.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's right.
Interesting.
So.
International podcast.
Yeah. By a lot, too.
Okay.
45, I guess, I don't know the complete metrics, but it says 45 Frankfurt, and then 28, the next one down in Tasmania, Hobart.
Tasmania?
Yes.
19 in Seattle, Washington.
Uh-huh.
19 in Georgia.
Yep.
18 in Los Angeles.
Uh-huh.
We were in 34 countries this last year.
Yes.
Total downloads, the most, obviously, for the United States. We almost had 500 downloads last year.
Nice.
United States. Germany, we had almost 50. Australia, we had 42. Canada, we had 12. And sneaking in, Nigeria with 10.
Nigeria.
Yes. Probably Prince's.
Our top episodes, which I'm pretty sure we can guess the number one. Because no matter what,
Whitney Houston want to dance with somebody.
It gets plenty of downloads each week for some reason. And then Twisters, Anyone But You, Deadpool and Wolverine, and the American Society of Magical Negroes.
Wow.
Let's see. We totaled 776 minutes of total podcast time. Like I said, 34 countries. 2.41 total downloads. 2.41K. Sorry.
Yes.
Total downloads.
Over 2,000 downloads. That's great.
Good.
So.
Thank you,
There
everybody.
we are.
That's right. Thank you for a great 2024. And welcome to 2025. We're here. Let's boost those stats even more this year.
Please, yes.
And we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.